Did you know that Ghost of Tsushima was originally pitched to Sony as Red Dead Redemption meets Samurai? It's a pretty wild and interesting story. While most of us know Sucker Punch Productions as the masterminds who created the infamous series, where you run around using wild superpowers, back in 2014, right after they finished infamous First Light, they decided to leave to try something totally different, and one that fans had been dying for. They simply walked into a meeting with Sony and sold the entire idea with just that one simple line: Red Dead Redemption meets Samurai. Sony was impressed by this idea and the studio got the green light for it. However, making that dream a reality wasn't easy. It took the team 6 full years of hard work to turn that simple pitch into the masterpiece we play today. If we look closely at Ghost of Tsushima, we can definitely see hints throughout the world proving just how much Red Dead Redemption actually inspired it. Even though this game takes bits and pieces from a lot of open-world titles, the director, Nate Fox, straight up admitted that the original Red Dead Redemption was their #1 inspiration. Now, obviously you won't see cowboys running around Japan, but it's all about the immersion. Think about it. Red Dead did such an amazing job making you feel like a real cowboy, from the landscape to how you talk to NPCs. Sucker Punch wanted to capture that same magic, but switch the cowboy hat for a katana. They wanted a world that makes you feel like a true samurai. Fox even used Red Dead as a reference to get people excited during development, basically telling them it's Red Dead, but with samurai. And honestly, who wouldn't want to play that? But the inspiration didn't stop there. The combat? That comes straight from classic samurai movies and comics, teaching you to be patient and wait for the perfect moment to strike. And if you ever felt the urge to just wander off and explore something cool in the distance, you can thank The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for that. Just like in Zelda, Sucker Punch wanted to spark your curiosity and pull you off the main path to find secrets. At the end of the day, art inspires art, and Ghost of Tsushima is the perfect example of that. Speaking of that inspiration, let's look at the actual history the game is built on. The story takes us back to the year 1274, right in the middle of Japan's Kamakura era. This was the year the Mongol Empire invaded Japan for the first time. You step into the shoes of Jin Sakai, who has to face the terrifying Mongol horde, an army that was famous for being experts with bows and horses. But it's not just the invaders you have to worry about. The game throws you into a world full of messy politics, where you might have to fight other Japanese factions or even duel your own companions to win them over. However, even with all that attention to history, there is one massive detail the developers purposely got wrong. Did you know the sword Jin uses shouldn't actually exist? This is known as the katana anachronism. In 1274, the famous katana hadn't been invented yet. Back then, samurai actually used a weapon called a tachi. It was a longer, more curved blade that was worn with the edge facing down, not up. So why did they change it? Simple. Sucker Punch knew that when we picture a samurai, we picture that sharp, swift katana draw. They chose the iconic look over the accurate one just to make Jin feel like the ultimate warrior. And since you're here, that probably means you're loving the video. So why not hit subscribe and help us grow? Leave a like to let us know you exist. Bowing down to show respect is a big part of Japanese culture. In Japan, bowing is way more than just a greeting. It is a deep sign of respect, used to show honor to others or the spirits. Sucker Punch wanted to make sure this cultural pillar was in the game, so they actually gave players a dedicated button for it. Just swipe down on the touchpad and Jin bows. But here's the thing. The game never really explains why you would need to do that, leading many gamers to wonder if it has a purpose at all. It turns out, bowing is actually the key to unlocking some of the game's best secrets. While you can bow anywhere to roleplay, there are specific spots on the map, often marked by small wooden signs with a bowing icon, where the game is waiting for you to pay your respects. These are called hidden altars. If you bow at these locations, you trigger secret Easter eggs. Suddenly a swarm of frogs might spawn around you, fireflies might dance in the air, or fish might leap out of the water. And this isn't just a fun detail for the curious player, it's actually a challenge. There are a total of 10 hidden altars scattered across the world. You need to find and bow at 10 of them in order to unlock the Honor the Unseen trophy. So keep your eyes peeled for those little signs, because showing respect is the only way to get that platinum. It won't turn the tide of the war against the Mongols, but it is pure magic. Some of these spots aren't even clearly marked, meaning players discover them purely by chance, just by being respectful at random shrines. One of the very first things that pulls you into the Ghost of Tsushima is just how alive the world feels. A huge part of that magic comes from the dynamic weather. A violent thunderstorm can instantly raise the tension before a duel, while a beautiful dawn can make a quiet moment feel peaceful. But here is a secret feature that makes you feel like a god. You can actually control the skies. Jin carries a flute with him, and it's not just for show. If you go into the menu, you can equip different songs. When you play them, the weather shifts in real time to match the mood of the tune. Want a stormy battle? Play Shadows. Want a sunny ride? Play The Sun's Warm Embrace. How do you learn these magic songs? You have to hunt down singing crickets hidden in cages across the map. The more you find, the more tunes you unlock. Now, obviously playing a flute to summon a storm isn't exactly realistic, but it is such a wonderful detail that shows off the game's incredible tech. But controlling the weather with a flute isn't the only way the sky changes. The game is actually watching how you play, and the weather reacts to your soul. When we play massive open-world games like Red Dead Redemption 2, we're used to our choices changing everything. In that game, your honor level literally decides the main character's fate, whether he gets a peaceful redemption or a brutal end. It makes you stress over every single decision, knowing the ending depends on it. Tsushima takes a very different approach. The developers didn't want to punish you for using stealth, so whether you fight like a noble samurai or a terrifying ghost, the main story beats remain the same. However, that doesn't mean the game is ignoring your actions. Instead of changing the ending, it changes the world itself. The game is actually watching how you play, and the weather reacts to your soul. The entire story is built on Jin's internal struggle. Should he stick to the honorable way of the samurai, or do whatever it takes to save his home? If you fight with honor, facing enemies head-on and challenging them to standoffs, the island tends to stay sunny and bright. But if you start acting like the ghost, using stealth, stabbing enemies in the back and using poison, the game responds by sending more and more violent thunderstorms. It's as if Jin is upsetting the natural balance of the island, and nature itself is angry at him for abandoning his code. So if you find yourself constantly riding through rain and thunder, it's not just bad luck, it's the game telling you that you've truly become the ghost. My favorite part of the game was undoubtedly the standoff. It just makes you feel like a total badass samurai. Whenever a group of enemies approaches, you don't have to hide. You can walk right up and challenge them to a duel. The camera zooms in, the music swells, and you wait for that split-second moment to strike. However, many players go through the game thinking this is just a cool way to take out one or two guys before the real fight starts. But if you build Jin correctly, you can end the entire battle before it even begins. With the right upgrades, you can slice through an entire squad in seconds. At the start of the game, Jin can only dispose of one enemy in a standoff, but if you spend your technique points in the ghost tree, you can unlock a streak to kill 2 extra enemies. Then if you equip the fully upgraded Sakai clan armor, it adds another 2 victims to the chain. All in all, this means Jin can take out a maximum of 5 opponents in a single standoff sequence. This is a massive advantage, especially in the Iki Island DLC, where the enemies are much tougher and have tons of health. It doesn't matter if they're a brute with a shield or a heavy spearman, a standoff strike is always a one-hit kill. Apart from slicing through enemies with your cool katana and switching between stances, there is one more weapon that changes everything: the bow. You unlock this pretty early in the game, right after completing the Tale of Ishikawa mission in Act 1. Suddenly, your gameplay gets way more versatile. You don't have to just rush in, you can pick people off from a distance or play stealthily. But even with a bow of your own, enemy archers can still be a total nightmare. That's where this next secret comes in. The game actually allows the players to deflect arrows with their swords if timed perfectly. This skill isn't available right away, but it is a total game changer. If you progress far enough into the deflection skill tree, Jin learns the ability to literally block incoming arrows just by holding his guard. In any big battle, you always want to take out those pesky sharpshooters first. This skill makes approaching them so much less of a headache. You can just calmly walk up to them while blocking their shots, or if you prefer, give them a taste of their own medicine and snipe them from afar with your own bow. The most beautiful and mesmerizing part of Ghost of Tsushima is how it completely ditches the standard video game stuff. You know how in most open world games you are constantly staring at a minimap in the corner or following a big ugly glowing line on the road? It breaks the immersion completely. Ghost of Tsushima takes a totally different approach. Instead of a GPS, it uses the guiding wind. If you need to find your way to a mission, you simply swipe up on the controller's touchpad. Immediately, the wind picks up, the grass blows in the direction you need to go, and the trees sway. It is incredibly cool, and if you listen closely, you can actually hear the rush of the wind coming directly out of your controller's speaker. But the wind isn't the only thing guiding you. Nature itself wants you to find its secrets. You've probably seen the foxes. These adorable little creatures will bark to get your attention and wait for you to follow them. If you chase them, they lead you to hidden Inari shrines to upgrade your charms. However, foxes aren't the only animals trying to help you. While you're riding your horse, keep an eye on the sky. You will no doubt spot bright golden birds flying overhead. These birds are actually the game's way of saying, "Hey, look over here." While foxes strictly take you to shrines, these birds will direct you to literally everything else. Hidden hot springs to increase your health, bamboo strikes to increase your resolve, or even cool new cosmetic items. Those interested in exploring will easily become sidetracked by the sheer number of bonus activities these birds throw at them. You might set out to simply ride to the next story mission, spot a golden bird, and end up on a completely different adventure. We already know that foxes are great at showing you where to go, acting like little furry tour guides to the Inari shrines. But did you know their job doesn't have to end once you reach your destination? Foxes aren't just for guiding you, they're also for petting. This might not change your combat stats or help you kill Mongols faster, but it's easily one of the most wholesome details in the entire game. After a fox leads you to a shrine, don't just run away. If you walk up to them and press R2, Jin will crouch down and pet them. The animation is absolutely adorable, and the fox will jump around excitedly or nuzzle Jin's hand. It's a perfect little break from all the stress of the war. But if you want even more animal friends, you need to visit Iki Island. In the DLC expansion, the developers took this step further with animal sanctuaries. Here, Jin can sit down and actually play his flute to charm wild animals. It's a minigame where you have to tilt the controller to match the music. If you succeed, you can bond with deer, monkeys, and, yes, cats. The cats on Iki Island are especially great. Unlike most real-life cats that ignore strangers, these wild cats will come right up to you, let you pet them, and hang out. It's a level of cuteness that makes the island feel even more magical. Did you know that Tsushima actually has a massive reference to Sly Cooper? It makes total sense when you think about it. Sucker Punch Productions, the studio behind this game, was the original creator of the PlayStation 2 classic Sly Cooper series. They couldn't resist hiding a tribute to their favorite raccoon thief right here in feudal Japan. The Ghost of Tsushima Sly Cooper Easter egg is actually the key to earning a hidden trophy called Cooper Clan Cosplayer. Basically, the game lets you mix and match specific gear to turn Jin Sakai into a human version of Sly. But fair warning, you can't complete this look until you reach Kamiyagata, the frozen northern region of the map. So if you aren't there yet, you might want to bookmark this for later. If you want to earn the trophy yourself, here is exactly what you need to hunt down. First, you need the base. You can't just buy this, you have to earn it by completing the unbreakable Gasaku, one of the epic mythic tales found in Act 2. Sly is known for his blue outfit, so you need to dye Gasaku's armor to match. Head to any merchant and buy the Ocean's Guardian dye for 10 flowers. It gives Jin that classic blue and gold aesthetic. This is the most obvious nod. You need to head to Jogaku Temple in the frozen north. Use your grappling hook to climb up the corners of the temple all the way to the very roof. There, blowing in the wind, you'll find this headband, which features icons of Sly's famous cane. Finally, you need the tail. A tanuki is a Japanese raccoon dog. Clever, right? You can find this sword kit at a Pillar of Honor in the southeast corner of Kamiyagata. It's tricky to reach. You have to navigate a climbing section, almost like a Shinto shrine to get there. Equip all 4 items at once, and the trophy is yours. We all know the pain of massive open-world games where you have to tediously clear a location or finish a quest before the game finally lets you fast travel there. It feels like a chore, right? Well, Ghost of Tsushima completely respects your time by changing the rules. In this game, you can get to any objective instantly. The moment you discover it, you don't actually have to complete it first. If you ride past a fox den, a hot spring, or even a Mongol camp, it immediately becomes a permanent fast travel point on your map. This is a massive game changer for exploration because even if you're totally disinterested in doing that specific side activity right now, you can still use it as a strategic anchor to quickly zip around the map later. It makes the daunting task of cleaning up side activities for that 100% completion feel like way less of a grind. This strategy is even more critical when you get to the Iki Island expansion, because the main quest there barely uncovers the map. By unlocking these points early, you can fly across the island without having to ride your horse through the fog every single time. If you've completed the main story and are wondering what else there is aside from the mythic tales and standard side quests, you should really start paying attention to the people around you. Towns and refugee camps are not just glorified shops for upgrading your katana or armor. The residents living there are actually your best source of information. As you walk through a settlement, you might notice a speech bubble pop over a villager's head. The game will prompt you to press the right trigger. And if you do, it activates a small, intimate cutscene where the NPC tells Jin a rumor about a haunted forest or a missing family. This immediately marks a new tale of Tsushima on your map. You don't have to do them right away. but it is incredibly useful to just listen and get the location marked down for later. But the villagers in safety aren't the only ones who need help. While you're out exploring the wild, you will often spot Mongol patrols dragging a prisoner along the road. If you push in and save them, which is usually pretty easy since the patrol is small, the freed prisoner will often thank you by revealing the location of a hidden enemy camp or a secret stash, making the world feel like it's constantly guiding you to your next adventure. Sony provides many accessibility options in their first-party games, setting a gold standard for the industry, and Ghost of Tsushima is no exception to this rule. The director's cut comes with significantly more accessibility options than the original release, showing that Sucker Punch listened to feedback to make the game playable for everyone. While it's still not quite as extensive as the groundbreaking suite found in other Sony exclusives like The Last of Us Part 2, it's definitely a massive step up from the original PS4 version. These new settings include things like lock-on mechanics for combat, which help players who struggle with camera control, and enhanced subtitle options for those with hearing impairments. Accessibility options are always great for gamers who might otherwise not be able to play the game without them, but they aren't just for people with disabilities. There's absolutely nothing stopping any other player from using them to make the game a little more manageable or comfortable. At the end of the day, everybody should play a single-player game exactly the way they want, whether that means enabling aim assist for a relaxed experience or turning off everything for a brutal challenge. The Iki Island expansion is an exciting new addition to GOT, offering a whole new playground for players who think they've mastered the main game. But you can't just swim there right away. To start the Iki Island DLC, you must first finish Act 1 of the main story, specifically the A New Horizon tale, and of course, purchase the expansion. Once you've done that, you need to look for a new quest called Journey into the Past in your journal. Track it and it will lead you to a settlement in Drowned Man's Shore, where you'll find a peasant who kicks off the entire spooky storyline. However, before you hop on the boat, the game gives you a serious reality check. It explicitly warns you about the increased challenge ahead and even gives you a chance to turn back. Some brave or foolish players might ignore this and forge ahead regardless of their power level, only to get absolutely crushed by the tougher enemies. Fortunately, the game doesn't trap you there forever. If you find yourself completely out of your depth, you can always return to the main islands via fast travel after completing the first couple of introductory missions. On the PS5, the jump between islands is practically instant, and even on PS4, the load times are surprisingly fast, so hopping back and forth to grind for upgrades is never a hassle. Supplies are valuable, but they aren't the only collectible Jin needs to worry about. We all know the struggle of needing just a few more supplies to upgrade a sword, but did you know you're probably sitting on a goldmine? Depending on where your priorities are, you might have way more of a certain raw material than you actually need. If you're totally disinterested in upgrading a specific armor set that uses linen, for example, you can actually sell that excess material to vendors in exchange for supplies, which act as the game's main currency. It's a great way to get rich quickly, just be careful not to accidentally sell something super rare that you might need later. But the looting gets even better in the Iki Island expansion. In the main game, hitting your inventory limit was annoying, but on Iki, Jin earns the ability to store goods directly on his horse. This saddlebag upgrade means you never have to leave loot behind again. You can either stockpile massive amounts of resources for future upgrades, or just hoard it all to sell for a massive profit. While the game offers plenty of stealth options for the silent assassins out there, sometimes you just want to look cool, and standoffs are easily the most honorable and dramatically stylish way to start a fight. But here's a pro tip that most players miss. Initiating a standoff at a populated camp doesn't mean you have to commit to a loud, chaotic brawl for the rest of the battle. If the group you challenge is separated far enough from the rest of the camp, you aren't locked into open combat forever. Once you win the standoff and slice them down, Jin can actually slip right back into the tall grass and re-enter stealth mode. This allows for a terrifying hit-and-run tactic where you can wipe out the front guards, vanish, and then, if you find another isolated group, you can even initiate a second standoff in the very same area. At first, you might only take out one enemy, but as you upgrade your skills and armor, that number grows, allowing you to thin the herd instantly before vanishing like a ghost again. If you pay close attention, you'll notice that Jin actually cleans his katana after every single fight. It's a small detail, but it adds so much to the realism. If a battle is particularly long and brutal, like when you're capturing a massive Mongol base, you will see that Jin's sword is dripping with blood and his armor is caked in mud. But you don't have to wait for an automatic animation to fix it. You can actually clean the sword manually at any time by simply swiping right on the controller's touchpad. Jin will flick the blood off in a swift motion called jaburi, or wipe the blade on his sleeve before sheathing it, which makes you feel like a true master swordsman. The attention to detail doesn't stop at the sword though. If your armor is filthy from rolling around in the dirt, you don't just stay dirty forever. Taking a dip in a hot spring or jumping into a river will instantly wash away the grime. Even cooler, if it's raining, you can just walk through some thick bushes or shrubs, and the physics of the wet leaves brushing against your armor will actually wipe the mud away in real time. Darts are really helpful in stealth, and you can unlock them once you reach Act 2. There are actually two types you can use: poison darts and hallucination darts. Another stealthy way to mess with your enemies is to complete the Proud Do Not Endure side quest, which is the specific mission that grants you these deadly tools. These darts are a total game changer because they're able to break through even the thickest armor while also inflicting terrifying special effects. Specifically, the poison dart will cause the enemy to spit up blood and die a slow, painful death, which often causes nearby guards to panic and flee in terror. On the other hand, the hallucination dart is pure chaos. It causes enemies to lose their minds and turn on each other, letting you sit back and watch them destroy their own allies. Just don't forget that you can upgrade your dart capacity at your local trapper, so you can carry even more of this chemical warfare with you. After completing the main Hammer and Forge quest, a special merchant at Komatsu Forge will begin to sell new saddles to you, but don't pull out your wallet just yet. These rare saddles cannot be bought with the supplies like everything else in the game. You can only buy them with Sashimono banners, which are rare collectibles found mostly in Mongol-occupied areas or hidden in remote corners of the world. This makes collecting them feel much more rewarding than just finding generic loot, because each banner you recover is a piece of Tsushima's history that you're saving from the invaders. It proves just how special this item is, transforming your horse from a simple mount into a walking display of samurai heritage that you literally had to fight to reclaim. In GOT, flowers serve as the primary currency for cosmetic customization, basically acting as your wallet for looking cool. While the flowers you see in the wild come in all sorts of colors, it doesn't actually matter which ones you pick for trading. Any flower contributes to your bank to buy a vast array of vanity items from merchants. If you're running low on cash for that new look, the absolute best farming spot is the marshlands and swamps near Akashima Village in Act 2, which are densely packed with blooms. You can even equip the traveler's attire to make the guiding wind track undiscovered flowers for you, leading you right to them like a metal detector. But here's the twist. Flowers aren't just for fashion, they're also for killing. While most are for trade, specific purple flowers, wolfsbane and orange flowers, spider lilies, are vital for your gameplay. Picking the purple ones instantly refills your lethal poison darts, while the orange ones restock your hallucination darts. So whether you're grinding for the exclusive Ghost Transcendent die that only unlocks with the Platinum Trophy, or just trying to reload your blowgun, you should never ignore a flower patch. Tired of politely sliding open every single door with R2? Well, you don't have to. If you're in a rush, you can simply slice right through the papered doors with your katana. It saves you the polite but tedious animation of opening and closing them, letting you burst into a room like an action hero. Just be careful where you do this. If you slash up the doors in a friendly village, the locals probably won't be too happy about the sudden remodeling project you just forced onto them. But this trick isn't just for saving time, it's also for killing. Once you reach the end of Act 1, you unlock a terrifying move called the Shoji Assassination. This lets you turn a door into a weapon. If you're sneaking around, you can throw a wind chime to lure Mongol close to the other side of a sliding door. The second you see his shadow appear on the paper, you get a prompt to stab him right through the door, pulling him in for one of the most creative and satisfying kills in the game. In recent years, we have seen some truly massive open worlds dominate the gaming space, such as Red Dead Redemption 2, which I know is your personal favorite, and the galaxy-spanning Starfield, which I know is your personal least favorite. These games set a huge standard for scale, giving players endless horizons to explore. However, GOT takes a slightly different approach. While it is based on the actual Japanese archipelago of Tsushima Island, the in-game version is a carefully crafted, condensed experience rather than a one-to-one scaled replica. The island is divided into 3 distinct regions: Izuhara, Toyotama, and Kamiagata. Each area is packed with shrines, hot springs, hidden coves, and fortresses, ensuring that there is no empty space just for the sake of size. According to measurements by Twinfinite, the in-game Tsushima spans a respectable 11.02 square miles. To put that into perspective, it is smaller than The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is about 28.9 square miles, and The Witcher 3, which clocks in around 20.8 square miles. But don't let the numbers fool you, because the map is so dense with beauty and secrets, it feels just as grand as those giants. After slashing your way through a massive Mongol horde, you might notice something. Not everyone is dead yet. You will often see a few terrified enemies trying to crawl away from the fight. This is when the game gives you a choice. Prompts will pop up offering you the chance to end suffering by pressing square. My advice? Do it every single time. It's not just about mercy, it's about survival. Performing this execution is actually one of the easiest ways to earn back resolve, which is basically your power meter. In GOT, resolve is your lifeline. It's the only thing that lets you heal yourself or pull off those devastating special attacks. You will burn through it incredibly fast in tough battles, so taking out these helpless stragglers acts like a free refill. It allows you to gain that precious resource back without breaking a sweat, ensuring you're fully healed and ready for whatever enemy is waiting for you around the next corner. The samurai era has always been really intriguing for me, and GOT perfectly captures that historical atmosphere. It feels like you're stepping directly into a history book, but with way more action. The game begins with one of the most intense scenes I have ever seen, the Battle of Komoda Beach. We watch Lord Shimura stand helplessly as Lord Adachi walks out to challenge the invaders, only to be set on fire and brutally beheaded by Khotan Khan. This ultimate sign of disrespect triggers the battle to start and instantly hurls you into the fray. After a bit of struggle, nearly all the samurai are wiped out in minutes. But here's the crazy part. This tragedy is almost exactly what happened in real life. In actual history, the governor of the island, a man named Sukekuni, who was the real-life inspiration for Lord Shimura, led about 80 mounted samurai to confront the Mongol landing. Just like in the game, the Mongols had absolutely no desire to negotiate. They didn't care about samurai duels or honor, they simply launched a massive storm of arrows instantly. More than half of the samurai were killed right there on the beach, including Sukekuni himself. However, unlike the game where Jin survives and fights a guerrilla war for weeks, the reality was much bleaker. There was simultaneously Mongol landings all over Tsushima, and the entire island fell within just a few days. We've all seen Inari shrines in the game, but did you know that these spots are actually based on a real tradition that goes back over 1,000 years? Players will find it impossible to forget the Inari shrines on Tsushima Islands because they are absolutely everywhere, really bringing the spiritual side of Japanese culture to life. It turns out that Inari shrines were built in Japan starting way back in the 9th century. Inari is the kami or spirits of foxes, fertility, and agriculture, and is generally worshipped as a symbol of success and prosperity. In both real life and in the game, you will always see fox statues sitting at the entrance of these shrines to guard them. However, the game definitely exaggerates things a little bit for the sake of fun. GOT features a total of 49 fox dens packed onto this one island, but historically, it is highly improbable that there were ever that many Inari shrines on Tsushima Island at once. Have you ever wondered why the wooden gates in the game look so familiar? Here's why. These aren't just pretty decorations. They represent a deep historical reality of the island. In 1274, Tsushima was a melting pot of religion, where both Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines stood side by side. While Buddhist influence from Korea was spreading quickly and becoming super popular during the Kamakura period, the island itself held a much older sacred significance. According to legend, Tsushima is actually one of the very first islands created by the gods in the Shinto story of Japan's origin. The developers respected this sacred history by making the architecture incredibly accurate to the time. If you look closely, the cobbled stone stairways, the intricately carved stone lanterns, and the high-arched roofs of the central buildings are all perfect reflections of what would have actually existed back then, grounding this mythical story into real architectural history. If you're hunting for Mongol artifacts, you probably know that Mongol saddles are usually found sitting in stables inside enemy camps. But here is a weird detail that confuses a lot of players. At first glance, it seems like there are absolutely no stables in the starting region of Izuhara. Most people assume this is because the Mongols haven't brought their cavalry down that far south yet. However, that is actually false. There is exactly one hidden stable in the entire region, but you have to know exactly where to look to find it. If you head to the Stone Arch Crossing and search around the left side, you will stumble upon a primitive-looking wooden structure tucked away from the main path. Inside this secret stable, you won't just find the rare Mongol artifact saddle you need for your collection, you will also find something even rarer. The only enemy horse in the entire Izuhara region. It's a tiny, easily missed detail, but it's a cool reward for players who really explore every inch of the map. We discussed earlier that there are a total of 10 hidden altars scattered across the game, and finding all of them is a serious challenge for completionists. But one of the absolute hardest to find altars is located near the Kechi fishing village. The game plays a bit of a trick on you here, because unlike most collectibles, this one isn't actually found inside the village itself. If you spend hours searching every hut and stall in Kechi, you are looking in the wrong place. While it is still technically referred to as being part of the village area, the hidden altar is actually located on a quiet pier a little walk away, sitting right on the riverbank. It's incredibly easy to miss if you aren't looking for it, but once you finally spot the sign and have Jin bow to the altar, you are treated to a serene little magical moment. A cutscene triggers showing fish happily jumping out of the water, a peaceful reward for your detective work. Usually, finding a pillar of honor in Tsushima is fairly easy. They're designed to be seen from miles away, guiding you to your next cosmetic upgrade. But there is one specific pillar that seems to mock you from a distance, appearing to be completely out of reach. This is the pillar that holds the Twilight Oni sword kit, and getting it is a journey in itself. The pillar is located on a tiny, isolated island at the very southern tip of the Izuhara region, just east of Azamo Bay. When you stand on the shore and look at it, it seems impossibly far. If you try to ride your horse across, you will hit an invisible wall of deep water that forces you to dismount. Most players assume this means the area is off limits or requires a boat, but the solution is much simpler and more exhausting. You have to swim. You have to dive into the deep ocean and physically swim all the way to the island. It feels like a trek, but once you drag yourself onto the shore, you are rewarded with a beautiful gold and green color scheme for your katana that proves you went the extra mile. Literally. GOT actually has some amazing stances in the game that completely change the flow of battle, turning combat into a deadly dance where you have to adapt instantly to survive. You have 4 distinct styles. Stone stands for punishing swordsmen, water stands for flowing around shields, wind stands for kicking away spears, and moon stands for toppling massive brutes. It can be overwhelming to switch between them in the heat of a fight, but there is a brilliant hidden design trick that makes it second nature. All the stances serve a different purpose, and they are incredibly easy to remember if you realize the secret connection between the PlayStation face buttons and their respective enemies. The X button resembles crossed swords, which is why it activates stone stance. The circle button looks exactly like a round shield, mapping it to water stance. The triangle button points up like a sharp spearhead, triggering wind stance. Finally, the square button represents the solid blocky body type of the massive brutes, linking it to moon stance. Once you see this association, you never have to panic scroll through menus again. You just look at the enemy's weapon, match the shape to your controller, and win. This particular trip is really helpful when a large number of enemies attack you, and you feel completely overwhelmed. While GOT has frequently drawn comparisons to Assassin's Creed for its stealth and parkour, this specific trick is straight out of Far Cry's chaotic playbook. Inside some Mongol camps, you will find massive bears locked in cages. Instead of charging in sword first, sneaky players can shoot the lock off the cage from afar and let the beast run rampant through the area. It's incredibly satisfying to sit back in the shadows and watch as the bear tears through several enemies before finally being bested, thinning the herd for you. And let's be honest, while freeing trapped animals is technically an honorable thing to do, killing your enemies by having a bear tear them to death is probably a little more ethically questionable. But hey, it works. It was inevitable that there would be an Infamous reference in the game, as Infamous was arguably the most popular franchise Sucker Punch created before GOT. Despite how drastically different a gritty samurai historical drama is from a game about graffiti artists with superpowers, the studio didn't forget to throw a nod towards their roots. If you make the treacherous climb to the very roof of the Omi Monastery Pagoda, you will find a hidden item called the Band of the Second Sun. The headband itself is cool, but the reference is unmistakable. The name is a direct shout out to Infamous Second Son, and the bright red colour is an exact match for the iconic beanie worn by Delson Rowe, the game's protagonist. It serves as a quiet little tribute to the character who helped define the PS4 generation before Jin Sakai took up the mantle. The main theme of the game is honor, And throughout the journey, Jin's uncle relentlessly teaches him that honor is always greater than even death. To Lord Shimura, a samurai's honor is a huge part of his personality. It's ultimately what defines him. However, throughout the story, Jin slowly slips into ghost territory, choosing to do whatever it takes to save his family and his loved ones, eventually earning the title of the Ghost. It's such a beautiful piece of storytelling to watch him wrestle with this moral dilemma, but this internal conflict isn't just for the cutscenes. It actually changes how Jin behaves in the gameplay itself. Stealth and honorable combat go beyond just the way someone plays. The game actually judges you for it in subtle ways. Those who play in both styles may have noticed a stark difference in the way bouts end depending on how Jin approaches the situation. If he takes his opponent's head on like a true samurai, avoiding the shadows, he will often wipe the blood off his sword and solemnly honor the dead with a bow after a victory. It's a sign of respect for a worthy opponent. However, if he sneakily assassinates them or uses underhanded tactics, no such ceremony takes place. Jin simply sheaths his weapon and moves on. The game acknowledges that in those moments, you aren't a warrior showing respect, you're a killer getting a job done, and there is no honor in a stab in the back. As the game ends, players can visit Jin's house, an isolated location called Tradition's End that becomes his refuge after the events of the finale. It's a quiet place, fitting for a retired samurai, but it holds a secret that breaks the fourth wall in the most delightful way. Jin has a new base of operations here, and inside the humble shack are many objects with which the player can interact, offering a moment of reflection. However, there is an even deeper Easter egg hiding in plain sight. On a table near the center are numerous origami objects folded with incredible precision. If you look closely, you will realize they aren't just random shapes. They all represent legendary Sony properties, including a Lombax head for Ratchet & Clank, a tiny beast for Shadow of the Colossus, and a guitar for The Last of Us, among several others like God of War and Horizon. While it doesn't make sense in the world of 13th century Japan, it is a sweet homage to the PlayStation brand and the legacy of studios that stood alongside Sucker Punch. My favorite feeling in the game was just riding my horse through the tall grass, which makes you feel like a total badass, and the grass in the game looks really amazing. The way the fields of pampas grass sway violently in the wind or glow under the moonlight creates an atmosphere that is almost dreamlike. One of the game's major drawing points is its immersive world, and the developers accomplished this by removing the boring minimap and letting nature itself guide Jin towards his destinations. But the immersion goes even deeper than just the HUD. The protagonist also subtly interacts with the world while traversing to make him feel like part of the landscape. When walking or riding through tall grass, for example, Jin will gently extend his hand out and feel the blades as he passes by. It's a beautiful cinematic touch that is reminiscent of the iconic shot from the movie Gladiator, grounding you in the moment and showing Jin's connection to the land he is fighting to save. In Ghost of Tsushima, killing Mongol leaders is the primary way to progress your combat abilities and unlock new fighting styles. Basically, if you want to stop getting killed again and again by higher level enemies, you need to level up. But here's a pro tip that changes everything. You don't just have to kill them. Stealthy players will notice a way to unlock the stances twice as fast. If you sneak up on a leader while they're practicing in a camp, don't attack immediately. Instead, stay hidden and watch them. You will get a prompt to observe them by holding R2. Doing this grants you 1 stance point. Then, when you finally swoop in to kill them, you get an additional point. This means you earn 2 points per leader instead of 1. With this technique, you can breeze through the requirements and have your entire combat arsenal unlocked well before the second act even starts. The benefits don't stop there though. Once you unlock the ghost stance in Act 2, assassinating a leader instantly fills your ghost meter, letting you immediately terrify and one-shot 3 enemies. Plus, hunting leaders is the only way to earn the Mongol commander's armor in Act 3, and is the fastest way to grow your legend and gather rare resources like gold and steel. We discussed how the combat is really cool and how the stances feel so authentic. It's because they actually are. Well, mostly. In feudal Japan, there are 2 primary arts of the sword: Kenjutsu, which is the art of sword fighting once the blades are drawn, and Iaijutsu, the lightning-fast art of drawing the sword and killing in a single stroke, which we see in the standoffs. The fighting styles in the game are not a perfect representation of any single real-world school, but they brilliantly reflect the philosophy of how a samurai would fight, efficiently taking enemies down one at a time with clean, killing strokes rather than wild flailing. In GOT, Jin uses 4 different stances, and it turns out that these do bear striking resemblances to real samurai techniques. However, they are still more akin to cinema than history. To make the stances 100% historically accurate, the developers would have needed to change everything from the position of Jin's feet to exactly how he grips the hilt. Instead, they prioritized the fantasy of the samurai, making the combat feel readable, fluid, and stylish, just like in the classic Kurosawa movies that inspired the game. While the sword fighting leans a bit more towards cinema, the invasion of Japan itself is also historically accurate. The Mongol invasion of Japan actually came in 2 massive waves, the first of which set sail in 1274, the same year and time when our game takes place. Everyone wondered, the name of the game is just a cool title, but the game's name comes from the actual island of Tsushima, which sits in the remote waters roughly halfway between the shores of western Japan and mainland Korea. Because of this strategic location, Tsushima wasn't just a quiet fishing spot. For centuries, it was a major hub for trade networks and a notorious site for pirate activity. But in 1274, that location made it the unfortunate first point of contact for the Mongol fleet. Just like in the game, the invaders landed here and quickly overwhelmed the initial defense of mounted Japanese troops. However, getting the exact details of what happens next is actually a nightmare for historians. At the time, both the Japanese officials and the Mongol representatives completely misrepresented the details of the invasion in their reports. They did this partly to cover up the shame and embarrassment of their various defeats, but also because they genuinely misunderstood one another's culture and tactics. Piecing together the truth from these biased documents has been the cause of heated debate among modern historians for years, but despite the foggy details, the broad strokes of the invasion and GOT are surprisingly faithful to historical events, rooting Jin's journey in a sense of terrifying realism. Tsushima's world is so immersive and beautiful that there are tons of activities and many places to explore on the map. One of the most fascinating things that players can explore is the graveyards. Most of us just ride past them out of respect, but here's why you should stop. They're hiding a secret. If you're wearing the traveler's attire, your controller will start vibrating like crazy near these graves. Quick tip, you get this essential outfit for free by just speaking to the very first merchant you meet at the Hiyoshi Survivor Camp or any major settlement in Act 1. Do not miss it. The vibration is the game telling you that a singing cricket is hiding nearby in a small cage. These aren't just random collectibles, they're the key to controlling the elements. Collecting them unlocks new songs for Jin to play on his flute, allowing you to summon fog, clear skies, or rain at will. But there is one specific interaction that is really interesting. Once you collect enough crickets to unlock the song Lament of the Storm, you need to head to a specific grave located on a cliff to the east of Yarikawa. This grave appears near the end of Act 2 and belongs to a very close friend. If you stand to their grave and play this sorrowful tune, the skies will darken, lightning will crash around you, and you will unlock the hidden trophy, Dirge of the Fallen Forge. When Act 3 kicks in, Jin Sakai is taken to a snowy covered area, where you will find a blacksmith's apprentice shivering at the Jokaku Temple. This triggers the Fit for the Khan side quest, which sounds like a standard fetch quest but results in one of the most unique rewards in the game. The apprentice tells you a tragic story. His master was forced to forge a magnificent suit of armor specifically for Khotun Khan himself before being killed to keep the secrets of his creation safe. The pieces of this masterwork are now scattered across the region, held by brutal Mongol generals. To get them, you have to liberate several heavily fortified territories, which is a tough gauntlet of combat, but the reward is absolutely worth the blood, sweat, and frozen toes. Completing the set grants you the Mongol commander's armor, and it is a total game changer. Unlike every other outfit in the game, this armor isn't Japanese, it's purely Mongolian. Because of this, it functions as the ultimate disguise. When you wear it, Mongol guards have a much harder time identifying you. They will often hesitate or ignore you completely unless you get right in their face or draw your weapon. It allows you to walk through enemy lines like a wolf in sheep's clothing. On top of the stealth benefits, it's an absolute tank, offering massive damage reduction that lets you shrug off hits that would normally kill you. One of the first mythic tales you stumble upon in Act 1 is the Heavenly Strike, and honestly, you should drop whatever you're doing and finish this quest immediately. It isn't just a cool story, it unlocks arguably the most useful combat ability for the early game. The Heavenly Strike is an unblockable lightning-fast slash that consumes one resolve to cut through an enemy's defense instantly. It takes out most normal enemies in a single hit, and deals massive stagger damage to bosses, making it the perfect panic button when you are overwhelmed. The quest itself sets a grim tone for these legendary tales. It starts near the River Falls Bridge, where Jin finds a musician, Yamato, surrounded by a pile of fresh corpses. He tells you the legend of a lightning-fast strike so deadly it was forbidden, but you aren't the only one looking for it. You're racing against a traitorous ronin named Yasuhiro Koga, who is butchering civilians just to find the technique's secrets. The quest leads you on a detective trail following white-leaf trees, culminating in an intense duel against Koga himself. The coolest part? To actually win the fight and kill him, you have to learn the move mid-battle and use it to strike him down, mastering the lightning just in time to survive. To match Jin's terrifying aura, he needs a cool mask, and there is arguably no better option than the demonic Archer's mask. One of the most colourful and menacing masks in the game, this infernal visage is located in Lone Spirit Falls on Iki Island, but it is very well hidden. Players have to grapple up to a tree trunk near the waterfall in the southeast of the area, and then look around behind them to spot a hidden passage tucked away behind the falling water. Jin can slip through this wet crevice to find a secret cave, and inside lies a double reward. First, you will stumble upon a shrine dedicated to the Koopa Gang, complete with coins and raccoon imagery, a direct reference to Sucker Punch's PlayStation classic Sly Cooper. But more importantly, players can collect the demonic Archer's mask here. With its vibrant red paint and sharp teeth, it allows you to strike fear into the hearts of your foes, making you look like a literal demon of vengeance as you hunt down the Eagle's tribe. If you prefer a look that feels a bit more feral, there is another mask that rivals the demonic archer in intimidation factor, but earning it is going to take a lot more than just finding a hidden cave. One of the most common and arguably the best activities you will find across the map involves the adorable wild foxes. These orange companions will playfully lead you to secret Inari shrines, often forcing you into hidden areas or tricky platforming sections you might have missed otherwise. And yes, the best part is that once you reach the shrine, the fox will stick around so you can pet it and give it some belly rubs. However, if you want the ultimate prize, you can't just follow one or two. You have to find the foxes and the Inari shrines they guard at all 49 locations scattered across the entire game. It's a massive undertaking that will take you from the beaches of Izuhara to the snows of Kamiyagata. While this task can be incredibly time-consuming, the payoff is the Wolf of Tsushima mask. With its snarling bared teeth and feral design, it helps create a terrifying persona for Jin Sakai, perfect for players who want to look like a predator stalking the Mongols. Duels in the game are just something to behold. They make you feel like a true samurai, stripping away the chaos of the open battlefield for a moment of intense, intimate focus. But the reason these fights feel so cinematic isn't just because of the swordplay, it's because the game is literally filming you like a movie director. During these one-on-one duels, the game's camera doesn't just lock onto the enemy, it subtly shifts its behavior. Sucker Punch programs the camera to tilt to a precise 15-degree angle during these sequences. This specific angle isn't random. It's designed to mimic the cinematography of classic 1950s samurai films, specifically the works of Akira Kurosawa. This subtle Dutch angle adds dynamic tension to the frame, making every parry and strike feel like a scene from Seven Samurai rather than just a video game boss fight. Even the blades Jin wields foreshadow his story. If you examine the Sakai katana closely, you'll see it's etched with wind and storm motifs, serving as a subtle visual prophecy that Jin was always destined to become the storm that would sweep the Mongols off the land. But the realism of these weapons goes far deeper than just their texture work. Sucker Punch didn't just want the combat to feel heavy, they wanted it to feel illuminated. The sparks that fly when blades clash aren't just simple 2D animations pasted on top of the screen. They're actually programmed as dynamic light sources. This means that when you parry an attack in a dark environment like a cave or during a night raid, the sparks will physically cast real-time light onto Jin's face and armor. For a split second, the flash of steel illuminates his grim expression, grounding the combat in the environment and making every deflection feel like a literal spark of hope in the darkness. Tsushima has one of the most fourth-wall-breaking secrets ever discovered by data miners. While players were busy scouring the island for Sashimono banners and haiku spots, coders were digging into the game's actual source code. Deep within the game files of the director's cut, tucked away in a folder that players were never meant to see, is a text file titled "A Message to the Ghost." It isn't a lore entry or a quest hint. It's a direct, heartfelt letter from the development team at Sucker Punch. In it, the developers thank the players for bringing Jin's journey to life and express how the overwhelming support for the game saved the studio's morale during the difficult development period. But the craziest part, the file ends with a series of coordinates. When mapped out onto a real-world map of the actual Tsushima Islands in Japan, they point directly to the site of the Komoda Beach Memorial, the real-life location where the 1274 invasion began. It's a stunning bridge between the digital world we play in and the real history that inspired it, proving that for the developers, this wasn't just a game, it was a tribute to a real legacy. If you've finished the game once, you absolutely have to check out Kurosawa mode. It is much more than just a simple black and white filter. It's a total transformation that replaces the game's vibrant aesthetic with the soul of classic 1950s Japanese samurai cinema. The level of detail Sucker Punch poured into this mode is staggering. Instead of just desaturating the colors, the developers meticulously analyzed Akira Kurosawa's films to match specific levels of deep blacks and bright whites across different lighting conditions, ensuring the contrast feels authentic. They added a heavy film grain effect along with weathered artifacts, the scratches and pops you'd see on old 35mm film. Even the sound was treated. The audio is compressed to mimic mid-century technology, giving it a slightly muffled monaural quality. They even cranked up the wind intensity, because if there is one thing a Kurosawa film needs, it's dramatic swirling foliage and capes. To get the full experience, you really have to pair it with Japanese dialogue and English subtitles. But the most incredible part of this feature is what happens behind the scenes. This wasn't just a tribute inspired by the director, it actually received Kurosawa's blessing. The development team reached out to the Akira Kurosawa estate to show them the game. They were so impressed by the studio's commitment to the director's visual legacy, specifically his use of movement and weather as a narrative tool, that they gave official permission to use the legendary director's name. This marked a historic moment, as it was one of the first times the estate had officially endorsed a video game's artistic direction. Experience in this mode turns the game into a much more beautiful experience. One of the coolest things about the game is how it makes you feel the grit of battle through Jin's own body. Jin has a respectable arsenal of moves for his Mongol foes, and many of these have a direct physical impact on his character model. The game uses a dynamic weathering system that is incredibly detailed. For instance, if you crawl through a swamp or roll around on a particularly muddy patch of ground during a fight, you don't stay clean for long. If you immediately look at Jin, you'll see that his clothes, his cape, and even his face are visibly mixed with mud. It doesn't stop at just dirt though. After a bloody encounter, Jin's armor will be splattered with blood. If you're caught in a rainstorm, you'll see the water gradually wash the mud and blood away, leaving his clothes looking damp and heavy. When you reach the freezing north, snow will actually start to pile up on Jin's shoulders and hat if you stand still for too long. Exploring the islands is easily one of the best parts of the game, mostly because it doesn't clutter your screen with messy menus or icons. Instead of staring at a minimap, the game forces you to actually look at the beautiful world around you. Taking a page out of big games like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Breath of the Wild, every activity in Ghost of Tsushima has a visual cue, a natural signal that tells you something cool is nearby. It's all designed to make sense in the real world. If you see white flags fluttering in the wind, you've found a bamboo strike challenge. If you see dark plumes of smoke rising into the sky, it means a village is under attack, or a Mongol camp is nearby. Golden birds. These bright yellow birds will chirp at you and fly toward hidden treasures, hot springs, or even secret vanity items. Swarms of birds. If you see a group of birds circling a quiet scenic spot, that's your sign to sit down and write a haiku. Blue flowers. These often lead you toward the locations for mythic tales. What's so smart about this is that you never feel like you're following a GPS. You feel like a traveler reading the land. It makes the world feel alive and atmospheric, turning a simple ride across the island into a constant game of what's over that hill. It's not just a game mechanic, it's what gives the island its soul. The wildlife in the game is even more beautiful and breathtaking than the scenery itself. Tsushima offers a variety of animals that add so much character to the world, making it feel like a living, breathing place. It's not just the vibrant and colourful flowers and trees that make the islands look like a painting. The animals bring it to life. While you'll often see large animals like deer running through the forests or dangerous bears guarding the mountains, the game is also filled with smaller critters that are there just for the atmosphere. If you take a moment to slow down, you'll notice a world full of life. You can even spot pelicans soaring over the waves or diving for fish. When in water, you can find little frogs hopping around the lily pads. While these tiny creatures might not look perfectly detailed if you zoom in really close, they don't need to. You look at your feet, you'll see tiny crabs skittering across the sand, trying to get out of your way. The katana slash is one of the most satisfying aspects of the game, and you really can't put that feeling into words because it just feels so weighty and powerful. Since sword fighting is the heart of the experience, the developers knew they had to make the impact feel real, and they definitely didn't hold back when it comes to the more gruesome details. Watching the animations in combat is spectacular, especially when you see the dismemberment system in action. Seeing an enemy's arm get sliced clean off and fall to the ground while blood squirts out isn't exactly a pleasant sight, but it really grounds the combat and makes the danger feel authentic. This sense of realism continues with the blood splatter, which is handled in a gleefully realistic way that changes based on your every move. The game actually tracks your position and the angle of your blade, so the direction of the spray changes accordingly every time you land a hit. For instance, if you skewer a foe through the shoulder with a sharp forward thrust, you'll see a small stream of blood gush through the wound, whereas a vicious slice across the torso will result in blood bursting out in all directions. These details might be intense, but they perfectly capture the lethal nature of the samurai's life, making every duel feel like a high-stakes struggle for survival. Tsushima is an incredibly windy place, and the air itself is one of the most unique and recognizable elements of the game's world. This constant movement really helps the island stand out from other open-world games, because it looks absolutely incredible. With every gust of wind, long stalks of grass and massive trees sway gently, while the particle effects make every moment feel alive. Walking through a deep forest in the middle of a storm as dead leaves blow past you is a truly impressive sight that adds so much to the game's unique visual identity. The wind isn't just for show though, it acts as your guide, blowing in the direction of your next goal so you never have to look at the boring map. This attention to detail extends even to the animals you encounter while exploring. GOT deserves a lot of praise for its excellent enemy designs, and one of the most interesting enemies isn't a soldier at all, but a Mongol eagle. These birds don't attack you directly, but they act as scouts that will alert soldiers if they spot you sneaking around. What is truly fascinating and a bit heartbreaking is how these eagles react to their owners. If you kill the eagle's master in combat before you kill the bird itself, the eagle won't keep fighting or fly away immediately. Instead, it will land softly by the corpse to mourn its dead master for a few moments before flying away into the distance, never to be seen again. When Ghost of Tsushima launched in 2020, it didn't take long for it to become one of the most memorable titles released in gaming's modern era. However, in spite of its most notable features, like its breathtaking landscapes and compelling narrative, not every idea conceived during development made it into the final release. Some of the most fascinating what-ifs involve huge chunks of backstory for characters we love, like Ryuzo, and even entire locations like the Otsuna grasslands, which was shown off in early trailers only to be scrapped or renamed before the game hit shelves. Since the game is literally named after its protagonist, Jin Sakai, the story naturally revolves around him. That's what makes a major cut to his backstory so significant, as it changes one of the story's biggest plot points. In the version we played, Jin is haunted by the guilt of not being able to save his father, Kazumasa Sakai, from a bandit's blade. But according to recovered dialogue in early scripts, their relationship was originally meant to be much darker and more complicated. In some of this recovered audio, Jin tells a chilling story to Yuna about the scars on his body. Instead of them coming from childhood bullies, he reveals they came from his own father. Jin explains,
"When that would happen to me, I would grab a bakken and hide in the forest, slash at the bamboo, and pretend it was my father. When I was a child, I once spied on my father dressing for battle. I watched him put this mask on, and I ran in terror because my father disappeared. In his place was the one who killed men on the battlefield, the one who hurt me at home."
This unused dialogue completely flips the script on Jin's trauma. Instead of a son mourning a hero, we almost got a survivor trying to process the memory of a man who was a hero to many, but a monster behind closed doors. Even Yuriko has cut lines where she admits to Jin that his father knew how to train warriors, but he never learned how to raise a son. She explains that the public could never know the truth, because it would ruin the hope people placed in the Sakai name. While the final game settled on a more sympathetic version of Kazumasa for the Iki Island DLC, these cuts show that the ghost almost had a much more painful origin story. It makes you wonder how differently Jin's struggle with honor would have felt if he were rebelling against a father he feared, rather than one he felt he failed. This particular rare item is my favorite, but you'll have to be a true master of the game to even see it. The Charm of Heavenly Rebuke is a legendary item that only becomes available in New Game Plus mode, and it's easily one of the most powerful and expensive treasures you can find. To get it, you have to track down a mysterious merchant named Baku the Voiceless, who hides out on a small island in Ariake. He doesn't take normal money. He only deals in ghost flowers, a rare currency you earn by recompleting tasks in your second playthrough. This charm is tucked away in Baku's shop for 25 ghost flowers, making it one of the priciest items he sells, but the power it gives Jin is absolutely worth it. When you have it equipped and perform a heavenly strike, there is a massive 50% chance that lightning will literally strike the grounds nearby, instantly killing a second enemy. If you're lucky, you can even pair it with the Charm of Fortune to make that lightning strike almost every single time you use the move. It basically turns Jin into a storm god. There's a 30 seconds cooldown between strikes, but it completely changes the aura of your combat, especially if you play the flute to summon a thunderstorm before a big fight. Giving the ghost a more supernatural ability like this allows you to create builds that can tear through entire waves of Mongols in seconds. It's the ultimate reward for players who beat the game and decide to keep the legend of the ghost alive for one more round. Now this makes Jin look like a total badass, and it's likely to be the very last thing you unlock in your journey. The Ghost Transcendent armor die for the Ghost armor set is shining, sharp, and pure white, a look that makes it feel like Jin Sakai is finally coming to his own as a legendary figure. However, the game doesn't just hand this over. You have to truly master every single inch of the island to earn it. To unlock this legendary look, you have to do absolutely everything. You'll need to track down every last fox shrine, and every hidden cosmetic and collectible, write every haiku, finish every side mission, and even bathe in every single hot spring across Tsushima. It's a massive checklist that requires you to see and do everything the game has to offer. When you finally reach 100% completion and attain that coveted Platinum PlayStation trophy, the die will automatically unlock in your inventory. Wearing the Ghost Transcendent set is like wearing a badge of honor. It tells the world you've fully explored the island and seen Jin's story through to the very end. Being able to fly across the map in these colors is the ultimate way to cap off your experience in style. If you want to increase your chance of survival in Tsushima, you must upgrade your health, and Sucker Punch implemented an amazing system using hot springs to do exactly that. Instead of just spending skill points or finding a magic potion, Jin actually rests in these steaming pools, procrastinates for a moment, and thinks about his life, his memories, and his difficult decisions. You get to choose what he reflects on, whether it's his favorite food, his dead father, or his feelings for Yuna. It's a cool little break from the brutal world that actually increases your maximum health bar every time you take a dip. You can find these hot springs scattered all over the world, usually marked by steam rising into the air or red-leafed maple trees. Most of them are easy to spot because they're surrounded by brightly colored flowers or are located near settlements. However, there is one that is notoriously well hidden from players. The carved mountain hot spring is tucked away deep between the mountains, making its steam almost impossible to see from a distance. To find this hidden gem, you have to scour the mountainous region to the west of Ariake. The spring is located right in the narrow valley between the peaks. It's easy to miss, but finding it is essential if you want that extra boost of health to survive the tougher battles ahead. The boss fight against the eagle on Iki Islands feels a bit rushed. You spend the entire expansion battling the hallucinations she plants in your mind, but when you finally face her, the confrontation is just a standard duel. She switches between a staff and a sword, throws some kunai, and taunts you. But for a villain who can warp reality, it feels surprisingly grounded. It turns out there is a massive reason for that anticlimax. The Eagle originally had a much more ambitious 3-phase boss fight that was cut during development. The concept art and early files suggest that the battle was supposed to involve a giant hallucination of a dragon. Instead of just parrying her staff, Jin was meant to fight through a nightmare sequence where her poison manifested as a massive beast, forcing the player to distinguish between the real duel and the supernatural projection. This explains why the final version feels slightly abrupt. The developers likely had to scrap the complex dragon phase due to time or technical constraints, leaving us with a duel that hints at a madness we never truly got to fight. To give Jin a more authentic samurai look that honors his clan's lineage, you can acquire the Sakai clan armor, a set that's as intimidating as it is powerful. You can find Jin's ancestral gear early in Act 2, by completing the main quest Ghosts from the Past in the Kibara prefecture of the Toyotama region. This armor isn't just a piece of protection, it's the legacy of Jin's father, Kazumasa, passed down to the son to finish what was started years ago. This armor is heavily focused on aggressive melee combat, granting a moderate increase to both damage and health, but its standout feature is its ability to turn Jin into a one-man army. Wearing it increases your standoff streak by 1, allowing you to cut down up to 5 enemies in a row when fully upgraded, and gives you a 10% chance to terrify nearby enemies just by winning a duel, sending them running in fear before you even touch them. To truly complete the look and delve even deeper into the lore, the Sakai clan headband is a must-have item. This unique item features the Sakai clan emblem in the middle and serves as a symbol of Jin's identity, but unlike the armor, it's not readily available. Unlocking it requires dedication, as the player must embark on the Jin's Reflection side quest to find it. These quests are scattered throughout Tsushima and take the player to various locations from Jin's past, where he must confront his memories and difficult history. By completing all these poignant moments, you will not only unlock the coveted headband to match the armor, but you will also gain a much deeper understanding of Jin's character, forging a stronger connection with the man behind the ghost. Now, how can we complete the set without equipping our beloved companion, Jin's horse, with Sakai horse armor? If you're willing to take on some of the most challenging content in the game, specifically the mythic tales found in the Iki Island expansion, you can unlock the legendary Sakai horse armor. This unique set doesn't just look incredible, it turns your horse into a legitimate weapon of war. Once equipped, you become significantly more resilient to attacks while mounted, meaning you won't get knocked off by a stray arrow nearly as easily. The real game changer, however, is what this armor does for your offense. It buffs your horse charge ability to deal 50% more damage, which is enough to kill massive brute enemies with a single hit, letting you plow through road blockades without even drawing your sword. On top of that, every time you crash into an enemy, there's a 10% chance you will instantly recover 3 resolve, rewarding you for playing aggressively. While finding this armor requires completing a specific and emotional mythic tale involving Jin's father, the reward is a trusty steed that is fully equipped to handle the dangers of Tsushima, making your horse feel less like a vehicle and more like a partner in battle. The Monochrome Master is another trophy that the game doesn't explicitly tell you how to unlock, and for trophy hunters like me, it is such an overwhelming task, making it a true badge of honor for explorers. To get it, you can't just rely on the main settlements. You have to track down 2 very specific, very secretive artisans hiding in the wild, the White Dye Merchant and the Black Dye Merchant. Finding them is an adventure in itself. The White Dye Merchant is the easier of the 2 to locate. He has set up shop at the base of a watchtower in Wanderer's Pass in Uzuhara. However, the Black Dye Merchant is much more elusive, living in a dark, small cave hidden away near Kawamata village in Toyotama. Locating them is only step 1. To actually buy their exclusive monochrome gear, which looks incredibly sleek, you need currency, but not supplies or gold. These merchants only trade in flowers. While you can find flowers all over the island, if you are short on cash, check around the various hot springs, as they tend to grow in abundance there. Once you manage to hunt down both merchants and purchase just 1 item from each of them, the hidden Monochrome Master Trophy will pop, proving you have mastered the art of style as well as the sword. We didn't get this beautiful open world in just a blink of an eye. It actually went through a lot of phases in development. It has a rather interesting story. Ghost of Tsushima is now famous for its perfect balance of deep, mysterious woods and wide rolling plains, but for a long time, the game was almost entirely a dense, confusing thicket that made navigation a nightmare. Speaking to IGN on an episode of their PlayStation show Podcast Beyond, creative director and art director Jason Connell explained that the early versions felt more like a maze than an island. When we had the game built for the first, maybe 2 years, it was a lot of forests, Connell said. It was a ton of trees, and you always felt like you were in this claustrophobic tunnel. It was beautiful, but really deep forestation, which does a couple of things. It is very cool, but it makes it hard to know where you are without a compass or a minimap, something giving you that extra information your brain really needs. To fix this and stop players from getting lost, the team realized they needed to break the tree line and let the players breathe. Connell admitted he looked at other giants of the genre for inspiration to capture that sense of scale. What we did was we started opening up fields, and I definitely pulled some Shadow of the Colossus photos out and said fields as reference because it just feels so epic when you're going through a massive field. This shift wasn't just aesthetic, it was driven by a specific philosophy called content density. The team wanted to ensure that the world felt full without being crowded, allowing players to naturally flow from one adventure to the next using only their eyes. Our content director Jeff talks a lot about content density and what is the correct density. Connell said, explaining that it's the idea of thinking about if you were currently doing something, you're going across the world and you run into something. How much further would you have to ride your horse before you might find the next thing? Or can you see the next thing from where you currently are? How dense is it? And I really enjoyed that conversation because it let us think about what the right philosophy is for our game. If we want to stand in one place, you just completed something. You should be able to, generally speaking, look around and find one more thing on the horizon, or see the shrine from the top of the mountain. Have you ever wondered why the horses in the game look extremely realistic? It isn't just clever animation, it's because Sucker Punch actually brought real horses into the motion capture studio. To ensure the riding mechanics felt authentic, they placed sensors on actual horses to record every muscle twitch, hoof stomp, and shift in weight. They didn't just capture the galloping, they captured the quiet moments too, like when the horse shakes its mane. This dedication to capturing reality is why your steed feels like a living, breathing companion rather than just a vehicle with 4 legs. This obsession with living detail extends to the world around you, specifically the sky and the ground. The sky you see above is never a static picture. Every single cloud in the game is procedurally generated, meaning the game is constantly painting the sky in real time. Because of this, you will never see the exact same sky twice, making every sunset unique to your playthrough. Looking down, the game tracks thousands of individual leaves simultaneously. They don't just move in a loop, they react physically to the wind direction and to Jin's movements, swirling around his feet during a duel or dancing in the gale before a storm. All of this visual fidelity was built around a strict internal mantra the developers used: mud, blood, and steel. This slogan was the guiding star for the entire project. It meant that nothing should feel magical or floaty. The combat had to feel grounded, dirty, and visceral. They wanted you to feel the weight of the steel and the mess of the mud in every fight. To complete this immersion, they had to get the sound perfect, which was a challenge for an American studio. They didn't just hire translators, they hired expert dialogue coaches to ensure the Japanese voice track used old Japanese. They avoided modern slang and phrasing, ensuring the characters spoke with the specific cadence and vocabulary suitable for the 13th century. It is this final layer of polish that makes the game feel like a time machine rather than just a movie. The developers went to extreme lengths to make Tsushima sound exactly right, spending weeks in Japan recording the actual ambient sounds of the real island. The birds, the wind howling through the trees, and even the specific insects you hear are all actual recordings from the Tsushima region, not just generic sound effects from a library. However, while they wanted the world to be realistic, they actually had to break reality for the combat. The initial version of the sword fighting was so fast that playtesters physically couldn't keep up with the attacks. The developers realized that real samurai move faster than a player can press buttons, so they had to deliberately slow down the enemy animations just enough to give human players a fair chance to react. You might also notice that during many side quests, the camera stays far back in a wide shot. This wasn't just an artistic choice, it was a clever trick to manage the budget. High-quality facial animation is incredibly expensive, so by keeping the camera at a distance during smaller conversations, they saved money that could be spent on making the main story cutscenes look absolutely movie quality. Throughout the game, players see flashbacks of Jin's past and his upbringing, but it is the Iki Island expansion that really lets us see the Sakai clan and Jin's father in shocking detail. What's interesting is that this expansion offers a lot of backstory to fill the holes in Jin's history, forcing him to confront the actual site where his father was killed. We learn that his father, Kazumasa, wasn't just a noble hero. On Iki, he was known as the Butcher, and the locals hated him. This context changes everything, showing us that the honorable samurai past Jin mourns was actually filled with darkness and brutality. However, while the game feels incredibly authentic, it plays a clever trick with history. Jin Sakai is fictional, and while the Sakai clan is real, the timing is all wrong. The real Sakai clan wasn't actually founded until the 14th century, long after the Mongol invasion of 1274 took place. Sucker Punch borrowed the name of this prestigious real-life family to give the world weight, but they invented Jin completely. This allowed them to tell a personal, emotional story without being tied down by the specific biography of a real historical figure. Ghost of Tsushima delves deep into the samurai code and its central theme of honor, forcing Jin to choose between his rigid upbringing and doing what is necessary to save his people. However, the central conflict of the game is actually based on a historical anachronism. Bushido didn't exist yet. The strict samurai code Bushido that Lord Shimura preaches wasn't formalized until the Edo period in the 1600s, centuries after the game takes place. In 1274, during the actual Mongol invasion, samurai were much more practical warriors. They used stealth, ambush tactics, and any weapon available to win. In reality, the samurai of that era were already much more ghost-like in their methods than the game suggests, meaning Jin's dishonorable tactics would have been standard procedure for a warrior of his time. This blending of history and fantasy extends to Jin's iconic look as well. The cape. While it looks incredible, flowing in the wind, samurai rarely, if ever, wore capes like that into battle. The ghost silhouette is inspired much more by classic cinema, specifically characters like Zoro or comic book heroes, than by historical armor. Sucker Punch prioritized the samurai code rule and the visual language of superhero movies to make Jin feel like a mythic protector, even if it meant bending the fashion rules of the 13th century. Tsushima creates a stunningly believable world, but to achieve its cinematic style, it treats history more like a remix than a strict rulebook. For example, Jin's wardrobe is effectively a time-traveling museum. His armor set spans several centuries of Japanese history, mixing styles from the 11th all the way to the 16th century to ensure he looks cool, regardless of the year. This artistic license extends to his horse too. The game features modern-style stirrups, whereas real samurai of the era used specifically shaped abumi stirrups designed to let them stand up in the saddle and fire arrows while riding. Even one of the game's most peaceful activities, writing haikus, is technically impossible. That poetic form wasn't invented until centuries later, so a real Jin would have been composing waka poems instead. However, while they bet the timeline for fashion and poetry, the developers were incredibly strict about other cultural details to keep the world grounded. They accurately portrayed the peaceful coexistence of Shinto and Buddhist beliefs, showing how these two religions shaped daily life on the island. They were just as careful with the food. You will see characters eating rice and drinking sake, but you won't find a single potato or ear of corn, as those crops hadn't arrived in Japan yet. Finally, the combat perfectly captures the clash of two different war philosophies. While the game glorifies the romantic idea of the 1v1 samurai duel, it honestly depicts the terrifying reality of Mongol warfare, which focused on group formations and surrounding the enemy, forcing Jin to abandon his honorable duels and fight like a ghost to survive. The game we know is much more grounded and realistic, but early on, Sucker Punch almost made a completely different experience. Originally, they planned to include yokai, which are terrifying supernatural monsters from Japanese folklore. They included these as actual enemies in the main story. They eventually cut this to keep the grounded feel of a war drama, though they saved those monster designs for the multiplayer Legends mode. Alongside these monsters, Jin almost had a bigger arsenal to fight them with. Deep in the game files, there are traces of a Naginata and an Odachi that Jin could have used in the main game. These were likely cut so the team could focus entirely on perfecting the katana combat, making you a master of one weapon rather than a jack of all trades. The changes didn't stop at combat. The story itself was originally much more complex and very different from what we got. Even Jin's identity went through a crisis during this phase. Before they settled on the terrifying moniker The Ghost, his codename was originally going to be The Fox. While it fits the theme of the shrines, it didn't quite carry the same fear factor, so they changed it. There are even traces of a cut questline involving a secret Mongol spy hiding among the survivors at the Golden Temple that was never finished, leaving a permanent mystery about who among your allies might have been a traitor. But the coolest development secret is the one the developers called the Kamikaze Bunkai. To understand this, you have to know a bit about anime. In the famous anime Bleach, characters scream Bunkai to release the ultimate insane form of their sword, granting them godlike power-ups and a massive visual transformation. The developers actually used Bunkai as the internal nickname for the Ghost Dance. Originally, this move was going to be much more mystical and overpowered, just like in the anime, where Jin would essentially become a supernatural force of nature. While they toned it down to keep it realistic, the thunderclap, the black and white filter, and the way enemies freeze in sheer terror when you activate it still carry that legendary anime power-up energy. The saddest part of the game is undoubtedly when Jin's loyal horse dies near the end of Act 2. It hits really hard and is practically identical to the heartbreaking scene in 2018's Red Dead Redemption 2, where our beloved horse dies in the ending. What makes this loss so devastating is that this isn't just a random animal. It's the partner you chose and named yourself right after the opening prologue. Whether you picked Nobu, Sora, or Kage, that horse has been with Jin through every battle, every long ride across the grasslands, and every quiet moment of reflection. It accompanies him faithfully through his entire journey, carrying him to safety even as it is riddled with arrows during the desperate escape from Castle Chimera, only collapsing when Jin is finally out of danger. It's a moment of pure sacrifice that leaves Jin truly alone for the first time. This loss hits hard enough as a scripted story moment, but it could have been so much worse. In the early builds of the game, the developers actually implemented permanent death for your horse during regular gameplay. Originally, if your horse took too much damage in a fight with Mongols or fell off a cliff, it would die for real, and you would have to find a new one. However, this feature was cut because playtesters found it simply too traumatizing to handle. They realized that players were becoming too attached to their animal companions, and having to worry about them dying in every random fight was too stressful. So they changed it to make the horse immortal during gameplay, saving that heartbreak for the one specific unavoidable story moment that hurts the most. As polished as GOT feels overall, there are really interesting and hidden development secrets that help to become the game we see now. It starts with the man behind the mask, Daisuke Tsuji, the voice actor for Jin Sakai. He didn't just sit in the Sucker Punch office and read lines, he physically became the ghost. In a rare move for video game acting, Tsuji actually performed his own stunts for many of the combat animations. When you see Jin executing a complex katana flourish or diving out of the way of a blade, you're often watching Tsuji's actual physical performance, which adds a layer of raw authenticity to the movement that a stunt double might have missed. However, controlling that movement almost felt completely different. In the early builds of the game, the stance switching mechanics were mapped to the D-pad, up, down, left, right. The developers realized this felt clunky and forced players to take their thumb off the movement stick, breaking the flow of battle. They made the crucial decision to move it to the R2 plus face button system we have now, allowing for the fluid, dance-like combat that defines the game. But as development raced toward the deadline, we saw delays of Tsushima as well. You can physically feel the pressure the team was under, specifically in the frozen north. If you've ever felt that Act 3 moves faster than the leisurely pace of Act 1, you aren't imagining things. The third island's rush is a real phenomenon where the development time was simply running out. This forced the team to cut significant side activities and density from the northern Kamiagata region, resulting in a stark, beautiful, but noticeably emptier landscape compared to the lush south. This rush to the finish line left behind some strange anomalies in the game's code. Explorers in Act 2 have stumbled upon a no-name village, a fully built settlement that has no name on the map and 0 NPCs. It's believed to be a forgotten testing ground that the developers simply left in the world. Even creepier is the invisible vendor bug, found in some versions of the game in Act 3, where players can hear a merchant cheerfully selling wares from inside a completely locked and empty house, a ghostly echo of a shop that was deleted but not silenced. Finally, the Jin we know almost had a completely different personality. Deep in the files, there are thousands of lines of cut dialogue where Jin would constantly comment on specific items he found, very similar to Nathan Drake in Uncharted. He would have cracked jokes or made observations about pots, pans, and scrolls. The team ultimately cut this to make him the stoic, silent warrior we know and love, deciding that a samurai shouldn't be chatting to himself while sneaking through a war zone. The New Game Plus of the game offers many additions that not just offer you gear, but also other things that players can explore. It fundamentally changes how you can play the game. When you start your journey, the game introduces a mysterious new character named Baku the Voiceless, a specialized merchant who can only be found in this mode. Baku is a mute monk with a giant sack of treasures, waiting for you on a small, solitary island in the middle of Lake Izuhara. He doesn't want your gold or your supplies. He only trades in a unique currency called Ghost Flowers, which you earn from a second playthrough of the game. Baku's inventory is where things get really interesting, as he sells items that completely remix the game's difficulty and visuals. For players who think the game is too easy, he sells curses, which are special charms that actively hurt you to provide a hardcore challenge. The most brutal one is the Curse of Frailty, which turns the game into a realism mode where any successful enemy attack kills Jin instantly and disables his revival ability. There's also the Curse of Misfortune, which prevents enemies from dropping any loot, and the Curse of Exhaustion, which doubles the resolve cost for all your moves. But it isn't all about punishment. Baku also sells the Charm of Carnage, which makes combat significantly bloodier with the over-the-top splatter effects, and the fan-favourite charm of Canine Recruitment, which finally allows you to pet the Mongol war dogs and turn them into your loyal allies. Beyond the gameplay tweaks, Baku is the only place where you can finally unlock the wardrobes of the game's other main characters. If you ever wanted to dress like your old friend and rival Ryuzo, which honestly, most of us wouldn't like to, you can buy the Deadly Rivals attire, or you can don the Archery Masters attire to look just like Sensei Ishikawa. He also sells you the well-known Charm of Heavenly Rebuke, the supernatural item that gives you a chance to summon lightning strikes on your enemies. Ammo sometimes becomes scarce in Tsushima if you use more bows and arrows for stealth, and running dry in the middle of a camp is a nightmare. But here's the cool part. You don't have to rely on looting random bodies to restock, because the game actually has a hidden logic to where items are placed. Sucker Punch designed the resource spawns to make real-world sense rather than just scattering them randomly. If you're desperate for arrows, don't waste time looking inside houses. Arrows are almost always found near military tents or archery targets where soldiers would actually keep them. If you need black powder for your bombs, you should check the dark crawl spaces underneath houses, because that is where villagers would store dangerous explosives to keep them dry and away from the living areas. Even wind chimes follow this rule. They're usually found hanging near porches or eaves where people would sit to listen to them. Once you realize this pattern, you stop running around blindly and start scavenging like a real survivor who knows exactly where to look. The level of AI intelligence in GOT is actually astounding, specifically with the enemy archers. You've probably heard them scream "Dosho" 1,000 times before firing a volley of arrows. While you know by now that this is your cue to dodge, they aren't just yelling it for your benefit. The game actually programmed the other Mongol soldiers to react to this shout. When an archer yells "Dosho," which roughly translates to "get down," nearby allies will physically duck and cover to avoid getting hit by friendly fire. It's a small tactical detail that proves these aren't just mindless video game enemies. They're a disciplined army working together to kill you. The Ghost stance makes Jin invincible, and it looks really similar to the Spartan range of Kratos, and it looks intimidating enough to break the spirit of an entire army. When you unleash this mode, the color drains from the world, thunder cracks, and Jin moves with terrifying speed, cutting down enemies in a single strike. But the most satisfying part isn't the killing, it's the reaction of the survivors. If you terrify a Mongol, whether by using the Ghost stance, poison, or just brutalizing their commander, they don't just run away like standard video game NPCs. They panic. They will often trip over their own feet and fall face first into the mud while scrambling to escape. This stumbling mechanic makes them easy targets for a quick execution, but it also really sells the idea that you aren't just a warrior anymore. You're a horror movie monster to the enemy. You can ramp up this chaos by using the environment itself against them. If you look up in the trees during your travels, you can often find beehives. Shooting these with an arrow will cause the swarm to descend on nearby Mongols, distracting them and inflicting poison damage while you slip past or move in for the kill. And just as nature fights for you, it also guides you. If you're exploring at night, keep an eye out for fireflies. They aren't just atmospheric lighting. They will often assemble near hidden collectibles or items you haven't picked up yet, acting as tiny, glowing beacons to make sure you don't miss a secret in the dark. In the final quest of Ghost of Tsushima, The Art of Seeing, there's a heartbreaking theory that Yuriko doesn't just die of old age, but actually orchestrates a peaceful, self-chosen end. While gathering supplies for a final meal, Yuriko explicitly mentions picking special mushrooms. Remember, this is the same woman who just taught you how to make lethal poisons and hallucinogens from local flora. She knows exactly what every plant on that island does. By adding these specific mushrooms to her tea, she effectively takes control of her fading mind, choosing to exit the world on her own terms rather than letting dementia slowly steal her dignity. This hallucinogenic end allows her to slip away in a state of pure euphoria. After the meal, her mind drifts entirely into the past, and she begins treating Jin as if he were his father, Kazumusa Sakai. She recalls their secret romantic history and intimate moments, allowing her to die while living inside her happiest memory. It transforms a tragic death into a moment of agency, She ensures her final vision is one of beauty and love. Jin, realizing what is happening, plays along with the hallucination, allowing her to pass away peacefully on a cliffside with the man she loved by her side, leaving behind a legacy of knowledge and a final lesson on the art of seeing beauty in a dark world. The moment that made Jin finally go all out and push his boundaries beyond the samurai code was undeniably when Khotun Khan killed Taka right in front of him. It's the turning point of the entire story. Jin is bound, helpless, and forced to watch his friend, a simple blacksmith who never wanted to be a soldier, stand up to a mountain of a man. The Khan tries to manipulate Taka into killing Jin to save himself, but Taka refuses, choosing instead to strike at the Khan in a desperate suicidal act of bravery. Seeing Taka beheaded for that loyalty causes something inside Jin to snap, triggering a blind, murderous rage that leads to his first true ghost massacre, where he slaughters the remaining guards with a brutality that even Yuna finds terrifying. But the tragedy hits even harder in the quiet moments after the blood is dried. If you return to Taka's forge after his death, you will find a heartbreaking piece of environmental storytelling, a partially crafted sword resting on his anvil. This wasn't just a random scrap. It was meant to be Taka's masterpiece, a final gift for Jin. The design implies he was trying to create a weapon that perfectly balanced samurai strength with the ghost's stealth, a hybrid blade that would have defined Jin's new identity. It sits there unfinished, a silent reminder of the potential that was stolen and the friend who believed in the ghost before anyone else did. Yuna meets Jin at the start not as a hero, but as a cynical thief, a survivor who drags his broken body off the beach just so she can use him to save her brother. However, as they fight side by side, their bond grows into the emotional core of the game, with Yuna becoming the one person who truly understands the burden of the ghost. She teaches him that honor isn't about dying for a code, but living to protect the helpless, fundamentally changing Jin's worldview. This transformation changes her too, in ways the game doesn't explicitly shout at you. Near the end of the game, Yuna mentions in passing that she has stopped stealing from the people of Tsushima. But if you look closely at the environmental details at her final camp, you can find proof of this redemption. You'll find bundles of resources and food that she isn't hoarding for herself. Instead, the visual storytelling implies she has been secretly donating her supplies to the very refugees she used to rob. It's a quiet, powerful detail that shows she didn't just help Jin save the island, she started trying to heal it too. While Iki Island is famous for its cat sanctuaries where you can play the flute to summon adorable wild cats to pet, there is one specific location that holds a much deeper, real-world meaning. Hidden away in the northern part of the island, there's a shrine that doesn't just attract random cats, it features a unique geometric cat statue that looks different from the others. This spot is widely believed to be a tribute to the real-life cats of the Sucker Punch development team who passed away during the long years of the game's production. If you look closely at the area, the vibe is more somber and respectful than the other playful sanctuaries. When you complete the flute minigame here, you aren't just taming a wild animal, you're paying respects to the beloved pets who kept the developers company while they built this massive world. In Ghost of Tsushima, Norio isn't just another quest giver. He is a tragic, dark mirror to Jin Sakai's own evolution from an honorable samurai to the ghost. You first meet this gentle giant in the Toyotama region, specifically at Akashima village, where he is tending to refugees with a kindness that hides his fierce skill with a naginata. He is a warrior monk from the Cedar Temple in the frozen north, and his entire journey is driven by a desperate search for his missing brother, Enjo, the revered guardian of their order. However, the truth waiting at the end of his questline is one of the most devastating reveals in the entire game. When you finally locate Enjo at the Cedar Temple, you don't find a defiant hero. You find a broken man who has been brutally mutilated by the Mongol general Kachu. The horror deepens when you learn why he was kept alive. Enjo didn't just fail, he intentionally surrendered and gave up the locations of other hidden monks to the Mongols, effectively sentencing his own order to death, strictly to ensure that his younger brother, Norio, would be spared. This confession shatters Norio, but it serves as a perfect parallel to Jin's own struggle. Just as Jin sacrifices his honor and the samurai code to save his people, Enjo sacrifices his faith and his morals to save the one person he loved most. We have all discussed so much about the overarching theme of the story again and again, and how this game enforces it. Even the ending foreshadows it in a way many of us didn't even acknowledge. Throughout the entire journey, the concept of honor shifts from being a shield to a suffocating noose. The game constantly asks you if saving your country is worth losing your soul, and by the time the credits roll, the answer is clear. The victory is won, but the samurai died. This entire philosophical struggle is perfectly summarized in the internal lesson found in the game's final quiet moment. In the very last scene of the game, inside his new, lonely hideout, if you look closely at the ghost mask Jin is holding, you'll see it is slightly cracked. This isn't just random texture damage, it is a deliberate visual metaphor. The mask is flawed and fractured just like the honor he once held so dear. It signifies that while Jin survived, he didn't come out whole. He is permanently broken away from his past, his family, and his code, forever wearing a cracked face to hide the man he used to be. His identity is not just embedded in his name, but also in his calling identity as well. We know him as the Ghost, but the Mongols know him by the Ghost signature. When Jin leaves a warning note for the invaders, often found pinned to a post or left on a body, he rarely uses words. Instead, he signs it with a single drop of blood and a sprig of a ginkgo leaf. This isn't just an aesthetic choice. It's a calculated message. The blood represents the violence and fear he brings to the invaders, promising them death. But the ginkgo leaf is even more significant. In Japanese culture, the ginkgo tree symbolizes endurance, longevity, and survival against all odds. Some even survived the atomic blasts in real history. By pairing them, Jin is telling the Mongols that while he brings blood, the spirit of Tsushima is unbreakable and will outlast their invasion. Although the game isn't exactly a traditional RPG where you shape the world through endless dialogue choices, one of the most important decisions you make is simply choosing to help the common people in their boring side quests. At first, fetching rice or saving a monk seems like a normal, repetitive task, but when players reach the climax of the story, they realize these weren't just filler content, they had a massive butterfly effect that pays off in the final hours. We see this effect in full flow during the final mission, Eternal Blue Sky. When Jin launches his assault on Port Izumi, he doesn't just ride in with his main allies. The game rewards your investment by rallying the very people you saved to fight in the background. It isn't just a samurai battle anymore, it's a revolution. You see Kenji, the sake seller, who usually provides comic relief, steps up to the rig to siege weapons and explosives that rain fire on the Mongol fleet. If you finish Norio's storyline, the surviving warrior monks of Cedar Temple flood the battlefield to provide martial support. The cliffs are lined with the Yarikawa archers you recruited, raining death from above, while the peasant militia made up of the farmers you liberated in those boring early quests charges into the fray. Their presence confirms that Jin's transformation into the Ghost didn't just save the island, it empowered the common people to rise up and defend it themselves. Bamboo strikes give you more than just a satisfying slash sound. Completing them is the only way to permanently increase your resolve meter. Resolve is the lifeblood of Jin's combat, literally. It's the yellow orb resource that lets you heal instantly in the middle of a fight or pull off legendary moves like the Heavenly Strike. So finding these stands isn't optional if you want to survive the harder difficulties, it's mandatory. But let's be honest, some of these input challenges are brutal, requiring fingers of steel and the memory of a computer. To truly master the art of the blade and save your controller from being thrown, here are the essential bamboo strike tips. Speed is everything. The game doesn't just check for accuracy, it checks for flow. You have to press the buttons immediately after one another with no errors and no hesitation. If you pause for even a split second to think about the next button, you fail. It has to be a single fluid motion. Don't try to remember square, 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 triangle, triangle. It's too slow. Instead, group them in your head like a phone number. 3 squares, 2 triangles. Chunking the pattern makes your fingers react faster than your brain can read. This one's the best way for beginners. If you're still tearing your hair out, go to the accessibility menu and turn on simplified controls. This hidden toggle changes the rules so that sequences that require a series of rapid button presses will no longer have a time constraint, effectively removing the timer. This lets you input the code as slowly as you want, guaranteeing you get that free resolve upgrade without the stress. Every game has its secrets, and Resident Evil is no different. So if you want to continue learning about more secrets, click the video on your screen now, and I'll see you there.